Now, as you probably know, we are big fans at CFI of using the keyboard. In fact, using the keyboard is one of the main ways that you can gain a lot of efficiency in your workflow. Now, for me personally, keyboard use started on Microsoft Excel, but it's expanded and it's now at the point where I operate the entire computer almost exclusively with the keyboard. The idea is that the moment you get a thought in your mind, you can get it into the computer faster with the keyboard. Now, in this course, we will be using the default Macabacus keyboard shortcuts. If you've taken our Macabacus Quick Start Guide course, you will know where to find these. If not, let's quickly review where we can find keyboard shortcuts. One of the places that you can check to find default shortcuts is up in the ribbon. For example, in the Macabacus section of the ribbon, if we were interested in formatting, we could go into Format, Color, and if we hover over the blue-black toggle, then we get the keyboard shortcut here coming up, which is Control semicolon. So you can definitely find keyboard shortcuts by exploring through the Macabacus section of the ribbon. But often our go-to spot is the Shortcut Manager. So we go up to the Macabacus section of the ribbon, click Settings, Keyboard, and then we want to click right here, Shortcut Manager. This pane comes up on the right-hand side of the computer, really nicely organized into sections. We can also click on the different column headings like Action, Keystroke, and Utility, and have the Shortcut Manager sort for us so we can find what we're looking for. Another quick review item from the Quick Start Guide course is the accelerator key. For example, if I tap Alt on my keyboard, I get the letter U coming up here for Macabacus. You can control that in the settings. If we go into Settings, Configure, and then down the left-hand side, click on Ribbon, you can set the accelerator key for Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. As you can see, we've set them all to U so that they're consistent. So with that accelerator key set, we can hit the Alt key and then follow the letters. So Alt, we're looking up here, we see the U for Macabacus, so now we hit U, and now over here, E for Explorer pane. So tapping the E opens up the Explorer pane really quickly. Actually, it's not a bad opportunity to practice some keyboard shortcuts. Alt, U, E closes the Explorer pane, Alt, U, E can open it back up. It's really fast. Now, the great thing about the Explorer pane is it gives us an inventory of everything that is inside this file. Let's use the mouse to head over here into the Explorer pane and click the gear icon. As you can see, we have just about everything selected with the exception of numeric inputs, since there are a lot of numeric inputs in this particular file. Let's now click away from this menu for a second and click on the Model tab. We can now use the right arrow to expand the Model tab and see that we have a graphic here. That's our logo. We have another picture here, and this is the formatted model that you're shooting for. And further down here is what we're really interested in. We have some conditional formatting in this model that we're going to need to address to make sure that the formatting is correct. So let's continue exploring a little bit using the up arrow up to the Cover tab, and then the right arrow to expand. We can see again, there's our logo. We have a picture, which is a picture of the finished model, but we also have here a hyperlink, second hyperlink below, and also more conditional formatting. So let's move back down to the Model tab, which is where we started, and then Alt, U, E in order to close the Explorer pane. So the Explorer pane is great. It gave us an inventory of everything that was in this file. And in fact, if you had other Excel files open, you would have seen an inventory of everything that was open in Excel. What we learned here was that there's conditional formatting in this model, and there are also a couple of hyperlinks. So we're going to make sure that we include those when we go through and do our formatting. Let's jump into the next video and get it all started. So let's actually start talking about formatting now. One of the things you should do in terms of formatting is always try to use a lot of white space. It can be very calming for the reader, and also it can help the reader focus on the most important aspects of the model, i.e. the numbers. Now this model has a fair amount of white space, but it also feels a little bit busy. In fact, there are a number of different elements that are fighting for our attention. One of the things which is a little bit distracting here is the grid lines. Now using Macabacus, we can use the Control-Alt-G shortcut to turn off the grid lines. And already when you look at the model, it feels a little bit better or a little bit less busy. So that helped already by removing one small element that was competing for our attention. It's important to remember that with Macabacus up here under settings and configure, we could go down to this interface section and we can set the software to automatically hide the grid lines automatically, which is a great feature that we recommend. Now, one of the first things that we need to do here in terms of formatting is switch the font style. The fonts that are being used in this particular model do not meet our branding guidelines. In fact, here's a little pro tip on how to check the font style that's being used in a financial model. As you can see up here in the ribbon, we've clicked on the Macabacus tab, but we want to switch that over to the Home tab. How to do that with a keyboard? Alt-H, and then hit Escape a couple of times. We've now switched over so we can see the Home tab in the ribbon. So why did we do that? Because we wanted to see in the Home menu up here the font style that's being used. Now when we move around between the cells, we can see that New Times Roman, in fact, is being used almost everywhere throughout this financial model. We're going to want to switch that over to our font. So let's do a very quick review of where the setting lives up in the Macabacus section of the ribbon. Under Settings and Configure, we could go down the left-hand side to Fonts. And this is where we could load font styles into the cycle. As you can see, we've just loaded Open Sans in as the only option since this is the font that we're using in our models at CFI. And another quick place that we could check is right up here, Macabacus section of the ribbon, under Format, Font Style, we can see Open Sans as the one selection, and then we can see the shortcut right here, Control-Alt-O. So this is going to be really quick to get this done with that keyboard shortcut. So we want that font to be applied everywhere. So on our keyboard, let's hit Control-A to select all, and then Control-Alt-O to switch it over to Open Sans. Done. Now, it's never a bad idea to check your work. Remember, we want that Home menu up there, Alt-H. Hit Escape a couple of times. Now we can see up here, Open Sans. Let's move around a little bit in the cells just to check. In fact, we're seeing Open Sans everywhere, so it seems like everything's been switched over properly. Now that we've quickly switched the fonts over, let's hop into the next video and start modifying some of the other formats in this model. We'll see you there. Now, in order to make this model more brand compliant, one of the primary things that we need to do is change some fill colors. With Macabacus, that is super fast by using the fill color cycle. So let's just explore the ribbon, make sure that we know where it is. So up in the Macabacus section of the ribbon under Format and Color, we have here the fill colors, and you can see the fill color cycle coming up. We have 5 colors loaded in. We can also see over here that the shortcut is Control-Shift-K. You can remember K for color if you like. Now what we've done here, and this is a little bit of a tip, is you can see that we've loaded in these 2 orange colors right at the beginning of the cycle. That's because we're using these orange colors to mark up models where there's areas that we need to follow up on. And we like being able to access those really fast. Further down below, we have a light blue, a dark blue, and a gray, and we use those more for branding purposes. So let's pop back here and start to get into this fill color cycle and make some changes. Again, just remembering that shortcut, Control-Shift-K, if we were doing a quick audit of this model, we could hit that shortcut in places where we saw things that we needed to follow up on later. This can be a really fast way to mark up a model for review. So we're going to be going through some of those model review tips in a separate course called Audit a Financial Model with Macabacus. So what we want to do now is just quickly remove those fill colors. So this is where we're going to actually use a native Excel shortcut. We're going to use Control-Shift and use the arrows to highlight the selection, Alt-H for Home, another H, which is right up here for fill color, and then an N down here for no fill. So really quickly, that was Alt-HHN, which is quite fast on the keyboard. Now remember, we use mostly Macabacus keyboard shortcuts, but once in a while there's a native Excel shortcut, which we find faster. And that was one example where Alt-HHN is a really quick way to remove the fill color. Now what we really need to do here is fix this top banner. As we can see, this is not a color that we're using in terms of corporate branding. So let's select across and just hit Control-Shift-K a couple of times until we get to a really nice color that meets our brand standards. Perfect. Now, the other thing that we really need to fix is this big, heavy banner across the top. makes it feel like there's just one schedule or one statement here, when really, if we take a look, we can see there's an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet. So we need to provide a little bit of a visual clue to separate these schedules apart. In fact, what we can do is use that shortcut that we just discussed to remove fill color, Alt-HHN. So we can scoot over here to column J, select these cells, Alt-HHN, and then we can get the computer to repeat that last command by using F4. So we're going to select these cells here, tap F4, we're done. Now, the other thing that will help to visually separate these three schedules is by putting similar breaks into the borders that are at the bottom. Let's just scoot down here. You may remember the shortcut for no border with Macabacus. Control-Shift- removes the border there. And then over here, Control-Shift- cleans that border up as well. Now, we've organized these schedules from left to right in a horizontal fashion. Normally, we would always recommend vertical stacking of the schedules, and we would also align all the periods into the same column. We do this so we can easily link models in a vertical fashion by simply moving up and down inside one tab. We only just deviated from that vertical structure for teaching purposes. Take a look at the connections in this model. For instance, net income here is coming straight from the income statement, and the cash balance over here on the balance sheet is coming from the bottom of the cash flow statement. Now, the Macabacus shortcut that we used to show all precedents was Control-Alt-Left square bracket. We can easily now remove arrows with Control-Alt-backslash, just like that. If you're interested in learning how to build a best-in-class three-statement financial model, definitely check out our full course. For now, let's jump ahead to the next video.